Hey guys, what I wanted to do in a quick series of videos is just talk to you about the process of updating your practical assessment tools. This is something that the vast majority of RTOs struggle with. It's also something that a lot of trainers who haven't had a lot of exposure to audits really struggle with. So what I wanted to do is I wanted to kind of baby step through the process of how I go about updating a practical assessment tool, because knowledge assessment tools generally I find most trainers and assessors pretty good. You know, it's just about giving that kind of industry tweak to them. But with the performance knowledge and with practical assessments, that's something that like just consistently comes up. So we're going to kind of do this through like looking at three key areas. So the first is looking at the instructions, the second is looking at the observations, and then the third is looking at your product evidence that comes along with that. So basically what the process that you're going to be working with the vast majority of the time is you're going to be improving upon another tool. Okay, so what I want you guys to do is I want you to sit down, I want you to look at the other tool, and I want you to start to consider what works about it, what doesn't. So you've probably run it out a few times beforehand, but there'll be parts of it that aren't clear. You'll be doing it differently every time. And that's because maybe the instructions are a little bit more generic so that they can fit a whole range of sequences. But if you're doing it consistently in the same place with the same materials, then that kind of should really, really be reflected. So you're going to get out your marking guide and your mapping guide. So you're always going to have those two things in front of you. They've got various different names across organizations, but I want you to put your marking guide and your mapping guide together. Have those sitting out in front of you, okay? And you're going to start with your mapping guide because this is written for you as the assessor. It's not written for the auditor. The mapping guide is written for the auditor, but the marking guide is written for you as the assessor. So what you're going to do is you're going to take a look at the instructions first, okay? And when we're looking at the instructions, I want you to consider three things: context, resources, and timeframes, okay? Context, resources, and timeframes. So when we're looking at the context, some of the things that you need to think about is, is there enough context there to tell you how you should be delivering the assessment, okay? So where is the location? What is the actual overview of what you're going to be doing with the student, okay? So if there are 7 steps when we're breaking down working at Heights unit, it might be the first step is to get on to do the JSA. The second step is to get on your PPE and do a check. The third step is to go up the working at Heights area. The third is to move across a series of connections. The fourth is to do a job while you're at Heights, okay? And then it's to come down safely. All right, so those are the 5 steps that are involved in that. Does it really clearly identify what they're doing at each of those steps? All right, or is it a copy and paste of the performance criteria sort of language? Okay, so we want to have very observable ways what they're doing at each of those phases. So when we say they get out all of the relevant PPE, we don't say the PPE. Okay, we say they get out all of the relevant PPE, including but not limited to the harness, the tool that they're going to need when they get up there, safety, they've got their safety boots on, we're specific, okay, about what they do. When they get it on and they do the check, you're going to see specifically what they're going to be looking for. So you're going to make sure that the gear is well fitted, okay, that all of the harnesses are locked in, things like that. If we take it across to something like, making a coffee, okay, the students are going to make 6 coffees. They're going to make a latte. They're going to make a cappuccino. They're going to make hot chocolate or whatever, okay? As part of that process, they're going to take the customer's order. They're going to write the order down. They're going to send the order through the POS system or something like that. That might be one part of it, or it might be the physical process of making the coffee. So, what order do they need to do it in? Do they need to brew the coffee? Do they need to do the coffee first? Then they're going to do the milk. Then they're going to, what order do they need to put them in? All of that sort of thing. And again, it's observable behaviors, guys. So when they're You know, when they're taking the customer's orders, they're polite, they're friendly, you know, they use the correct terminology at all times. If they need to clarify an order, they clarify that order. You know, they go, you know, you know, sorry, can I just confirm? Or they confirm before they put the order into the system. Okay, when they're checking the coffee, they're leaving it in for the right amount of time so that it doesn't get burnt. You know, with the milk, again, they're making sure that they meet the time frames. They're swilling the cup however they're supposed to be. Okay, whatever those observable criteria are, it's the quality criteria that you want to be thinking of. So you know, you've got to be putting it into context for them. So the context is in the instructions, okay, and it's kind of that overview. So if I said to you, right, explain to me in 2 minutes what the student is actually going to be doing, that's your context. Okay, so the student is, you know, the student is going to basically get their PP on, head up, they're going to move across, you know, move across X and then move on to Y. They're going to do job Z, they're going to move back across Y, and then they're going to head down, you know, ladder, that ladder there. Okay, so it's providing a really clear context so that the trainer has an understanding of exactly what they're going to be doing, all right, and what they're then going to be explaining to the students. Okay, so that's the context. You've got to make sure that it's really clear in there. It's not generic, it's specific. Okay. All right, so the next one is resources. So you need to be explaining to the assessor, okay, what resources are actually required. What area are they doing it with? If you've got 12 students, what are you going to need? You're going to need a PPE form for each of them. You're going to need a harness for each of them. You need to make sure that if they're all using the same tool, that the toolkit is, you know, this is the toolkit and this is where it's located, okay? Same for the barista unit. What are all of the resources that you're going to need to have in order to be able to deliver this assessment, okay? Because when the trainer is reading through this thing first thing in the morning, if you're sick and, you know, Dave has got to come in and deliver the assessment for you, what does he need to have in order to be able to deliver this assessment? Okay, that's what resources should be listed somewhere in there. Okay, and then the last one is the time frames that are expected. So more and more units are kind of saying this needs to be done to industry standard. If it's done to industry standard, then you kind of want to give them an idea of the time frame. So in an assessors, you might say, look, each student should be taking maybe approximately 6 minutes to do this task, or each student should be taking, you know, less than 3 minutes to make a coffee. So when you're doing that sort of thing, you want to kind of provide a guide for the assessor. You might say, look, with 8 students, it should be taking no more than, you know, an hour to complete the practical assessment for this particular component. Okay. So again, in those instructions, and this is just the instructions phase, you're giving the assessor enough information that they can very clearly understand what they need to do, okay, and what they need to be able to do it, okay, and how they're going to explain that to the student. So getting that context right is really important. It's not generally something that curriculum developers can really include. It's not something that you'll find when you get a pre-purchased material. It's something that you actually need to very clearly explain, and it kind of needs to be written by the assessor, because it's the assessor is the one that explains it to the students, and you're the one that's in the best place to really understand how the whole assessment is going to roll out. So that kind of covers context. So I'll leave that one there for now. In the next video, what I'm going to cover is your observations. But as I've said, get your marking guide out, get your mapping guide out. This one is focused on your marking guide. Make sure you've got that context and that it's really clear what is going to be happening, where it's going to be happening, what sort of time frame it's going to be happening in. Get your context right. And then in the next video, we'll focus on actually looking at how you flow out in your observations. Okay, cool. Thanks. Bye.